they just didn't reprint this one. Who needed another one, you know? But there it is, there's another one. You know, often when there's two competing translations and one's earlier than the other, then the person who did the second one has to deliberately use a different word, so he or she isn't accused of stealing the first translation. So in a case like that, he'll use liberty of it's freedom of conscience. But if he uses freedom of conscience, they'll say, "Oh, you're copying the other translation." Do you understand that? That's one of the reasons why sometimes you'll find the words that are used will be less specific in the second translation. Okay, he talks about despotism. You probably don't have despotism. Maybe you have some other word there. It has an advantage. It's consistent anyway. It has a definite answer to every question. Same holds true for the Constitution of the Church. You know, it has a definite answer, he's trying to say. Okay, going on a bit. I have a new paragraph further down, but you may not. As soon as freedom dares to remove even the smallest structural element in this building, the entire edifice can start to collapse. And no one will know what's standing at the end. So, you know, you can't really start to remove bits according to these despotic institutions. And he goes on about see, this is obviously a Protestant era we're in. The despotism of the Roman Church has been abolished, you know, in most, I guess, the countries that he's talking about. But what has taken its place? Even in our own more enlightened time, things are still very vague, he says. We just don't know. And it's true, you see. Things haven't taken shape yet. Now, we'll all have this. He goes on to mention Thomas Hobbes. You have that? Thomas Hobbes lived in a period where fanaticism coupled with undisciplined desire for freedom recognized no bounds. You see that? Is that a new paragraph in here?
Yeah.
Okay. So our paragraphs, to some extent, agree with each other, do they?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, that's a good thing. At least we're on the same wavelength there. I'd ask you to read yours, but then I wouldn't be able to follow it. So you just have to stumble along with mine and yours together. So, Hobbes is living in the 1600s. What period is he talking about that Hobbes is living in where everything is in a terrible state and nothing knows any bounds? Do any of you know anything about Thomas Hobbes? Well, he's living in the period of the Civil War in England. The Parliament versus the, I don't know what you call the King's people, the Royalists. Parliament versus the Royalists. And he says it knew no bounds. Well, that's because there was war going on, but also there were all those wars in continental Europe at that time too, Catholic versus Protestants and so on. So I don't think it's just in England, but Hobbes wrote at that time. And and therefore he took his conclusions from that period. It was ready to stamp out royal power, overthrow the country's political structure. Weary of civil strife and inclined toward a life of quiet contemplation, Hobbes, he considered tranquility and security, tranquility of mind and security to be the supreme blessing. So this is what I've been telling you about Hobbes. So he's summarizing Hobbes in this paragraph. So he knows Hobbes and he's picking up from Hobbes, who's living in the mid-1600s, a century before Mendelssohn. Consequently, he thought the public welfare would be best served if everything, even our judgment of right and wrong, were made subject to the supreme jurisdiction of and power of the civil authorities. And spoke about, further along, a state of nature. You probably have that because Hobbes uses that language. The original state of nature of mankind is a state of general anarchy. Is that what you have? Or you have different something you want to put it differently? A war of all against all, in which every man may do what he can do, might is right. You want to read what you have there? I want to read your translation there.
The state of nature is a state of tumult, a war of all against all, in which everyone may do what he can do. Everything one has the power to do is right.
Yeah, you see, so the guy's deliberately trying to be different in this translation. And I'm not sure, I'm not sure that it's a good idea, but anyway, everyone always prefers their own translation. So you'll prefer the one you bought, and I'll prefer the one I bought. It's just a human nature to prefer one's own translation.
Mine's better.
Yeah, it always is. Yours is always better. It always is.
Bigger too.
Yeah, that's the way it is, clearer and better. So you're in a good state. You've got mine and you've got yours. So you've got double here now. You can't make any mistakes. So now you know all about Hobbes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So he starts criticizing Hobbes in the next paragraph. He was insensitive to the need for civil liberty. All right was grounded in might, all obligation in fear. And this applied everywhere as far as he was concerned. Okay, further along, next paragraph I have. Nevertheless, Hobbes' proposition contained a great deal of truth. Is that what you have? Something like that? Not to be word for word. Is that a new paragraph? Hobbes' our propositions contain a great deal of truth. Is that a new paragraph? Or is it in the middle of the paragraph?
No, it's new paragraph.
Yeah, new paragraph. What page is it on for you? 36. The confusion to which they ultimately lead was largely the result of exaggerated formulations which he used out of love for paradox. Moreover, in his time, the concept of natural law had not yet been sufficiently clarified. So that's the other concept I told you about, natural law. So we already have here freedom of conscience, state of nature, natural law, things I've already mentioned in this class. He's studying the same books that I've studied. You haven't, but you are starting to, should you go further, you will know where to look for these things. So, Hobbes still, according to him, did for moral philosophy what Spinoza did for metaphysics. Now, I don't know what Spinoza